Thank you, Presiding Officer. Another productive day, I would say, but maybe afternoon would be more accurate, at least for our food producers. Farmers and fishers are busy toiling to keep us fed and to fuel our rural economy. I'm not so sure the same can be said about us. Here in Scotland's National Parliament, we go through the motions, literally the same old motions, with little to show for it. Scotland's rural and coastal communities have been poorly served in the devolution era, with decision-making and decision-makers even more remote than ever. Unlike some members, I'm not keen on quoting US founding fathers or Greek philosophers, but it is often said that people get the government or politicians they deserve. Sadly, this is not the case, nor true for our farmers or fishers, and in the case of my constituents, who've got a government they didn't vote for. Indeed, if our farmers operated to the standard of productivity that our government does, we'd all be very hungry. They don't need a task force or a working group to get on with it. They make the best of what they have. They do complain. My inbox testifies to that, but not nearly enough, in my opinion, because there is no doubt that endless dithering, delay and denial of accountability by this government here in Scotland do cost them and make a difficult job harder. I've said it before, but it is worth repeating. Jim Fairley enjoyed it so much the first time. Scotland's farmers are the beating heart, not just of our rural economy, but our way of life. They are central to food security and provide the one energy source we cannot live without. They are the champions of our natural landscape and the true custodians of our environment. As I said before, the good news is Scotland's farmers are up for the challenge. Certainly.
Jim Fairley.
I have been listening closely and thinking about the things that you're saying. And you're talking about all the things that this Scottish Government hasn't done. So do you think that what the UK Government have done with the trade deals with New Zealand and Australia have been good for Scottish farming?
We need to speak through the Chair. Mr Mundell.
And that demonstrates exactly the point I was making, Presiding Officer. It's the very same intervention Jim Fairley made the last time I speak. And as I said last time, there are advantages to Scottish farmers in the New Zealand and Australia trade deal, with whisky tariffs coming down. And as far as I was aware, a significant amount of grain was produced in Scotland that goes into those products. And if we sell more of them, there will be more opportunities for Scotland's farmers. And the SNP are so interested in self-isolation that they want to put up yet another border with our biggest trading partner and bar the most important market for our farmers. It's laughable. It is laughable. And that's why we know that the Scottish Government are not really behind our farmers. Be in no doubt, they will find a way to survive, to manage and overcome the challenges they face. But that shouldn't be enough for us. In a country with as many opportunities and the agricultural potential of Scotland, we should be looking for our farmers to thrive, not talking them down and using them as a political football. Farmers should be the SNP's first partners when it comes to driving change and aspiration for rural Scotland. Sadly, that's not the case. In their seats in this government sit the so-called Greens, whose answer to everything in the countryside is to ban it. I was probably unfair the last time I spoke on this issue, because it was discourteous to ask the Greens how you eat a Sitka spruce when they weren't here to tell us. Obviously, it would involve leaving the comfort of their Edinburgh wine bars, but I have many farmers in Dumfriesshire who would be very happy to host them for a demonstration. Not the kind where you hold up a banner, shout or glue yourself to a cow. What they're looking for is for those in power in ministerial office to face up to the reality of what their policies mean on the ground. As good agricultural land in my constituency gets carpeted in commercial forestry with no balance or thought to local communities, let alone our ability to feed ourselves as a nation, the many excuses and diversions in the government motion ring hollow. The myth that somehow Westminster or Brexit is to blame for all the struggles in our rural sector. Certainly.
Very briefly, please, Mr MacDonald.
I wonder if what the member thinks about Save British Farming, what they said yesterday when he said farming is the sacrificial lamb of Brexit. We had the best trade deal in the world in the EU. Brexit torched trade, British farming is on its knees. That was yesterday.
Mr Mundell.
Well, I recognise that there are challenges for farmers, and that is one of them. But what I don't accept from those sitting on the SNP benches, including the former Deputy First Minister, who I used to think was a serious politician before he's transitioned to backbench flunky, where he tries to suggest that the biggest challenge when it comes to the biggest challenge when it comes to food inflation are actions from the UK government, when it is well known there is high food inflation across the rest of the UK. And I'd say to the member, in terms of his, I'm dealing with the last intervention, but if there's time, I will continue.
There isn't any time in hand.
When I say to the other member who originally intervened, I'm not going to take lectures on leaving the EU from a party that are so wedded to the EU that when opportunities like gene editing come up, they won't even listen to the EU's own advice. Nor will I take lectures from urban MSPs who tell me that leaving the EU has been universally bad for our farmers, when farmers in my constituency are pleased to see their LFAST payments restored. So, in conclusion, our coastal communities and our rural communities know that the Brexit and Westminster myth is exactly that, because they've lived through this urban central belt anti-countryside government's attacks on their way of life every day. They see how fishing and farming are under attack. They see the fall in populations, no housing, poor infrastructure, rural clearances by stealth and design, and they don't appreciate motions like today that suggest the problem lies somewhere else.